So my understanding with the Taliban is that they're kind of ethnocentric in their kind of Islam.
Pasht Yeah,
Is
they're
that
Pashtun centric. Yes.
okay? Yeah, that was
Which is
okay.
very un-Islamic, by the way.
I know because Islam, just like Catholicism, is all about like not being a nation, correct?
Well, I mean, there's so many un-Islamic things about them. They're basically focusing on an ethnicity, right? Islam is not about that. Islam is supposed to be about Islam only, not about race. So it is a supremacist, but based on belief, not based on
In
race, right?
theory, I mean, they're the most
Yeah, in
racist
theory.
people in the world, but
Yeah, I mean, yes, yes. I mean, like, to be fair, they don't get their racism from Islam. They get their racism from being backwards, right? From being, they have a lot of shit ideas. Some of it comes from Islam. Some of it has other sources.
okay, fair enough.
I mean, I'm not defending Islam because Islam is the mother load of
No, no, no,
shit
no, no, no.
ideas. Yeah, yeah, but like you could have a bag of all kinds of shit,
I
but
mean, you
still
see the
missing
same
some
thing with
other kinds of
early
shit. Yeah,
Christianity. The barbarism in some of the early Christian crusades predated the Christianity.
yeah. No, no,
Yeah,
but
so
like what I'm saying is Islamic communities do have a lot of racism in them, but it doesn't come from. I mean, there are hadiths that is racist,
mhm.
but it's not
Black dogs.
central. So, for example, yeah, for example, it's more colorist than racist, right? So the idea that white skin is nice and black skin is ugly is assumed. Like it's not even taught; it's just assumed, right? So, for example, the Houris in paradise, they're so white that they're translucent. You can see their bones, and yeah, I mean, and also
Yeah, heaven is
Muhammad
filled with Irish
made
virgins.
like
Yeah.
a reference. What?
Heaven is filled with Irish virgins.
I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, so it's not like I'm not saying it's colorist. It's very colorist, but it's just like assume that black is ugly. I mean, throughout history, by the way, even when it came to slaves, white slaves were more expensive than black slaves. So there's that. All right. So yeah, but I forgot what we even were talking about, but I think we addressed that, right?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to follow up on a couple of the Pakistan things and also just say LDS will stock you up if you guys want to get into survival stuff.
I think
All
Sammy wanted
right.
to say something about this.
All right.
There was something that I wanted to talk about in previous topics. One was that Taliban is not a big headache for Israel or similar nations. But when you consider but when you consider Pakistan, Pakistan creates a lot of diplomatic hurdles for Israel, right? Like
Right.
Pakistan usually leads all the narratives when it comes to raising voices for so-called Palestinians and different causes that are against Israel in UNO right. Taliban in that manner is not a big hurdle for them. Similar with India, like there are no public declaration of any defense ties or something like that. I cannot guarantee what's happening
All right.
overall, but I believe like Pakistan is somewhat a major hurdle for all the liberal powers,
Got
right?
it.
Like Israel,
Got
India.
it. Got it. Yep.
Yeah.
So got it. Let's just move on to the list. So yeah, Pakistan is a hurdle. Yeah, Taliban is more locally focused. Okay. All right. Let's
Next,
go.
I
Let's try
have.
to go through down the list because I have some other things I want to show you. And when it's my turn, when I do show, when I show something to you, it usually takes a little bit longer. So I do want to make sure that we go down the list.
We actually have a pretty short list today. You're third on it, Armin. First, we have Al Ace.
Hi, Armin. Two quick points. The first one was just a quick update on what Susie said regarding Iraq considering support for Israel. I just looked outside my window. I saw no pigs flying. So I don't know if that's because of Ramadan, but I just don't see that happening at all. But we'll
What
see.
did you see happening? Sorry, what didn't you see happening?
He's making a joke.
I know,
That's
but what is it? Yeah, but I missed it. What didn't you see happening?
I said I see no pigs flying outside my window. So
I know, but I missed the first. I got that part, but I
oh,
got
like
this is the first.
Iraq possibly supporting Israel over the Palestinians.
Well, no, okay, but there are Iraqi. No, so she's like,
Yeah, you
I
didn't
know this is a
understand
joke.
me.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
I
She's
apologize.
not talking about Iraq as a country, officially as a country, right? There are for sure Iraqis that support Israel. I met Iraqis that support Israel. So she's talking about certain people, not about Iraq as a whole country. Yeah, but the Iraqis who support Israel definitely exist.
Sure, yeah, I've met a guy actually at the airport a few months ago from when I was flying in from Germany that was like really nice guy and working on a lot of stuff like that. Susie, I did have a
No, that's
serious question too.
yeah, go ahead.
If the strikes do begin in Iran now, like what's the first actual milestone that we're like looking at to kind of trigger the 100-day plan from the Shah? Is it like him landing in Iran
Uh,
or what?
yeah. Okay, so that's a good question. So with regards to the situation in Iran, we're in the middle of the revolution phase, right? So we call it the Lion and Sun Revolution, right? And the way you have to think about this is that there's three phases: the revolution phase, the transition phase, and the post-transition phase, where we will have our elected government, right? We will have like an official democracy where people will elect our government, and that will be the post-transition, right? So the the revolution phase that we're right now in the middle of, it's very important for people to identify exactly when this phase finishes and we move to the transition phase. Some people's understanding is that the revolution phase ends when the Islamic Republic falls. That is false. The next way of thinking about it is that the revolution ends and we have entered to the transition period when Prince Reza Pahlavi lands in Iran, right? That is also false. And this is something I keep repeating on the Persian channel to my Iranian audience, that we are still in the middle of not just a revolution, we're still in the middle of war until the moment where Prince Reza Pahlavi is not just leading the new transitional government, but until the moment where we have stability for it, right? When it's basically undisputed, it's basically given that this is now the transitional government. So that's when in my opinion, that's when we could officially announce the revolutionary phase over. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I mean, it won't be like a white flag moment from the mullahs, but more of like when enough defectors are public and he's basically running the show himself, or like so to speak, the 100-day plan he's running. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. And also, when it comes to the fall of the Islamic Republic, it depends how we define that. Because, and I think like when officially it's announced by the Prince Reza Pahlavi and his team that this has happened, that's when we decide that, okay, the Islamic Republic has fallen. But the reason why is more difficult for us, at least, without that official announcement, it's really hard to, it's hard to define that, is because even if you kill Khamenei and then you get rid of many of the suppressing forces, and I don't know, maybe the IRGC lays down its weapons, we will still have some remnants of the Islamic Republic, some people who will basically think that they could continue fighting. They will turn into the revolutionaries. Like we probably are gonna have some Hamas like Hamas like group remaining from the Islamic Republic. However, like it's going to probably be weaker because Hamas gets funded by the Islamic Republic with the oil and gas money from inside Iran. However, I do believe once the Islamic Republic falls, there's going to be people from the Islamic Republic who will continue to fight against our new government, our new transitional government, and try to do terrorist activities, explosions here and there, maybe assassinations here and there. But the reason why I'm hopeful that that's going to be a weak, maybe like it's not going to be, it's going to be a problem, but it's not going to be an impossible thing to deal with because there is no other Islamic Republic to fund it, right? So when it comes to Hezbollah, when it comes to Hamas, when it comes to Aisha Shabi, when it comes to Zainab Yun, when it comes to Fatimiyun, The reasons why they persist, even though we need to defeat them, is because they're constantly being trained, they're constantly being funded, and they're constantly being supported with like weapons from Tehran, right? So there is no, once you basically take out the head of the octopus, there is no Islamic Republic for the Islamic Republic. So we, even though we're going to have these terror, like these Shia terrorist militia groups as a continuation of the, as remnants of the Islamic Republic, I think because they're not going to have that funding and support from something higher up, we're going to be able to get rid of a lot of them faster than a lot of people maybe would anticipate, in my opinion. I mean, some signs of them will always be there. Obviously, you cannot completely crush like terrorism to 0%. Like there's always going to be, but it's going to be manageable.
And do you not anticipate Qatar kind of stepping up their game to kind of, replace the Islamic Republic's role in funding and all of that?
Qatar's way of being a problem is different from the Islamic Republic, right? So Qatar, even for example, when they fund Hamas or other Islamic groups, it's not because they are very invested in the ideology. Okay, I mean they are Muslim Brotherhood, but they're willing to play anything, anyone, anything, any ideology, right? So they're more of it. They just want to have leverage everywhere. Like they're willing to support Islam. They're willing to, like Muslim Brotherhood. They're willing to support far left ideas, far right ideas. I mean, they support like contradictory viewpoints in different countries, right? It's just like to them this is all about leverage. It's not about like the Islamic Republic. Its ideology is the ethno-ashari, the Vilayat Faqih version of ethno-ashari Shia Islam, with the direct intention of getting the Middle East ready for the coming of the Mahdi, for the eventual domination of the planet. The Qataris just want to get rich. Okay, the Qatari, like for them, this is just like a way to get richer and richer and become more powerful, and they support whatever and anything they need to get there, right? So because the end goal for the Qataris, like for example, Muslim Brotherhood is a tool. It's not a goal. It's a tool, right? And because the Qataris end goal is to just get as rich as possible and have as much of influence and political leverage on many countries as possible, there's a certain level of instability that they cannot tolerate, right? So, for example, when Qataris support terrorism, they don't they don't their understanding is that this already exists, right? So we might as well use them as a way to matter more, right? But they don't want to support terrorism to the point where it causes so much instability in the Middle East. They don't want that, right? Because capital requires stability. Capital is very, very allergic to any signs of chaos. So, for example, I would assume that the Qataris, like I'm guessing right now, I'm assuming the Qataris are going to be. Oh, that's so cute, by the way. Okay. I'm assuming the Qataris are completely reevaluating their strategy right now, ever since Israel bombed Hamas leaders in Qatar, in Doha, right? And I think Israel gets a lot of criticism for doing that. But honestly, I think that was one of the best thing that Israel has ever done, because the Qataris always assume that all this shit that they're spreading everywhere will never come home, and they were like those missiles dropping in Doha is like you know the shit that they're spreading coming back home, right? And they're like, holy fucking shit, like we cannot, like this is not good. Okay, this is not good. Like this is like we were like the UAE and Qatar, all you see all those like big, skyscrapers and all the capital investment, all of that came into the UAE and Qatar because they're like, this is an area where you don't have war. Okay, like the idea is like the UAE and Qatar, like you have explosions, I don't know, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Gaza. Like we don't have that kind of shit here. That's why you bring your business here. So all of that narrative just goes out the window as soon as you have the first missile dropping in Doha. Like that is a complete destruction of all of that branding. That you don't. This is a stable area. So the Qataris are like, holy fuck, this is like, we have to completely reevaluate how we do politics. So because they're very sensitive about this, as big of a problem they are, I'm assuming that my guess is that Qatar would lean toward more towards supporting, I don't know, the Tucker Carlsons of the world and the Anna Kasparians of the world and less of Yahya Sinwars of the world. Because supporting Tucker Carlson and Anna Kasparians of the world brings you less like explosions in the middle of Doha, right? Than supporting like the Yahya Sinwars of the world. So there's still going to be a major problem, but in a different way, in my opinion, at least.
All right.
But does that answer? Yeah. Okay. Let's continue.
Yep, let's move on to Sammy. Okay, then
Okay.
if both Sammys deny raising their hand, let's move on to Armin.
Maybe there was a third Sammy. No. Okay. All right. All right. I just want to quickly go over. So I showed you this yesterday. Hold on. There's so many tabs open. I don't know how to select this one. So let me just do not this one. Not this one. Yeah. So I'm just going to quickly go through the list of the politicians who have been coming out and speaking as if the Islamic Republic is going to be attacked by United States like any moment now. Like the way that, so actually before, let me actually start with this first before I share my screen, right? So as I mentioned earlier, the United States for the past 47 years, their security doctrine when it comes to the Middle East did not involve ever suggesting like, well, at least when it comes to Iran, they never touched the regime change. They never talked about it. They never suggested it, and nobody. It was basically a taboo, especially after Afghanistan and Iraq. So even before Afghanistan and Iraq, it was never part of their strategy. But after the experience with Afghanistan and Iraq, this was the greatest of all taboos to even suggest. So we saw many in Israel. Many politicians talk about the fact that regime change is required inside Iran, and more recently, they seem to be all on the same page with regards to that. Like at least it seems like it. But when it comes to United States, talking about regime change in Iran was a huge red line that politicians stood away from. President Trump mentioned regime change a little bit. I think he mentioned on the plane that regime change would be a good idea, but then he took it back. And then more recently, he talked about it's time to look for new leadership inside Iran, which was a big deal, but it wasn't a full endorsement of regime change. But in the past 48 hours, so many American politicians, just one by one, are coming out and talking about regime change and speaking to Americans, and it seems like they're convincing them about something that is about to happen. It seems like the decision has been made, and now President Trump has asked them to go and tell the public and basically make the case for why this needs to happen, right? So first we saw that, but before I go to all the Republican politicians who are coming out one by one and making this case. Let's go first to Chuck Schumer because I already showed you this yesterday, but it's good to look at it one more time before I give you the list. This was after Marco Rubio met with the Gang of Eight. So the Gang of Eight are the main politicians in the United States regarding the top officials when it comes to security and stuff like that. And Marco Rubio met with them behind closed doors, and we don't know what he told them. But when Chuck Schumer, who was part of the Gang of Eight, when he came out, look at this caption. It says, "Damn, what did Rubio tell him?" Okay, so this is what he said. Let's just go through this before we go through the list of the politicians that came right after this, one after the other, talking about a regime change in Iran. So let's watch this one first.
This is serious, and the administration has to make its case to the American people.
What did you hear? Right. So this was huge for us, at least, because when we heard this, to us it seemed like we don't know what Marco Rubio told them, but to us it suggested that war is happening. The United States is going to be attacking, and so Chuck, when he says it's serious, it seems like the decision has already been made, and Chuck Schumer has switched to being concerned regarding whether Americans will approve of this or not. Like basically his voter base, he's thinking about the political cost of attacking the Islamic Republic. So he's asking the administration that the administration needs to make the case to the American people, right? So soon after that, let me see if I have this. Yes, soon after that, another member. So Chuck Schumer is the minority leader in the Senate, but then we had the majority leader, John Thune. He came out and said this. So he said, in my view, if you're going to, this was big. This is the first person other than President Trump this openly talking about regime change. Basically, completely different than 47 years of America's policy with regards to the Islamic Republic, right? So what it says, in my view, if you're going to do something there, meaning in Iran, you better well make it about getting new leadership and regime change. Senate Majority Leader John Thune told reporters on Thursday. He continued, the president, I don't think, to my knowledge, has made any decisions, but I think they're gaming out what contingencies might look like and what's in our national security interests. Of course, first and foremost is to prevent them from having a nuclear capability, but there are also other threats that they represent in the region, Thune added. So that's him. Senate Majority Leader says Iran actions should pursue regime change. This was a huge bombshell, at least for us. Then we had, I'm not going to play all of this because this is 8 minutes long, but then we had basically Senator John Kennedy coming out and making the case for why the Ayatollahs need to go. So this was an 8 minute speech. So I'm not going to play that. But there was this one, and after this, I'm going to show you the new ones. Okay, so these ones are the ones that we showed you. So because this is 2 minutes, I'm just going to play it really quickly. This is Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin. So let's watch this 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for your proactive approach to this. I mean, no one is on the airways louder and pro-Iranian people and the support for the revolution that's taken place in you. And you've really put yourself out there. So I have nothing but respect for what you're doing. And obviously, I think your listeners are showing their support for you. The truth is that, we'll support this rising of the Iranian people to get back their country and go back to the country that they once had prior to the Ayatollah coming into power in 1979. Iranian people used to be more pro-Western, honestly, than the United States. I mean, in the 70s, you had more women in the professional workplace in the United States. You had more women elected to public office than the United States. We would love to see that again. We would love to see that relationship with the Iranian people to grow again. But the Ayatollah is there. And the Ayatollah right now is trying to get a nuclear weapon, and we can't allow that to happen. The Ayatollah and his murderous regime has pillaged the wealth inside Iran to sponsor the terror around the world. We can't allow that to continue. At the same time, we're waiting for a leader to rise up in Iran, and we would love to see that take place. There doesn't seem to be an apparent leader, and we don't want to cause another Arab Spring like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. We don't want to see what happened in Iraq to happen in Iran. When we pulled out of Iraq, you saw a vacuum of ISIS and other terrorist organizations going there because there was a lack of leadership. We can't allow that to take place in Iran, and so while we support the people of Iran from trying to get their country back, at the same time, our focus right now is to make sure that the Ayatollah and his murderous regimes can't destabilize the world and the world economy by having a nuclear weapon. And so that's our laser focus. And at the same time, we want to be supportive of what's taking place and with the Iranian people. And when a leader arises, we would love to circle, or as I would say as a cowboy, circle our wagons around that individual and hopefully kick the Ayatollah and his regime out for good.
So you might be wondering why he's saying there's no leader, given that given that we already have Prince Reza Pahlavi. And honestly, mentioned this on the Persian channel. We actually prefer it like this, because what the Lion and Sun Revolution showed is that the anti-Pahlavi people really have nothing. Like, they're so insignificant that we don't really have to worry about them, and we don't. It actually, now that we don't have to really worry about any other leader being able to challenge Prince Reza Pahlavi, given the level of support that he already has. All we like, when it comes to the Americans, it would be actually better if they don't recognize him as a leader, so that when the Iranian people get the chance to make him their leader, it's completely seen as the Iranian people's choice for a leader, rather than Americans picking our leader for us, right? So, as the only thing that we need help with is basically removing the obstacle of the Islamic Republic shooting into crowds when we're coming in to change the regime. With That's all we need. Like, that's the only help we need, because we got the rest. So it's actually, this messaging is better for us, because he also said, like, once that person, the leader, emerges, like, whoever that might be. I mean, guys, who else could it be? Like, who else could it, like, is there even a single other name that is relevant? Then we will basically be united around that person. Okay, so that's good. So let the we don't want it's already good, because we don't want Americans to be choosing our leaders for us. Let the just support the Iranian people, and the Iranian people will make the rest. Let me just quickly, I know I saw Susie, I think she wants to add something to this. Let me just quickly go down the list. So this was another person, Leo Terrell, which is the chair of the DOJ task force to combat anti-Semitism and senior counsel. So he came out and saying the people of Iran deserve to live and be free. And then we had Congressman Randy Fine. He came out and said, "Hey guys, I don't. So I know some of you like him, some of you don't like him. It doesn't really matter. I'm just showing you what the pattern is. Okay, so he said, I mean, yeah. So he says, I appreciate this message. Okay, so he's saying when nobody thought it was possible, President Trump got the hostages out of Gaza. President Trump captured Nicolas Maduro in less than 3 hours. President Trump ended 8 major wars. He proved all the naysayers wrong. I trust that the president will put an end to the Iranian terror regime." So this is also a regime change talk, which is now like all of this, guys, but because all of this is in the past 48 hours. So now we have a Republican Pat Fallon. Let's see what he had to say really quickly here. This is 1 minute 43 seconds
Of
long.
course. Now, you're on the Intelligence Committee, and I'd love to know if you could assess the backdrop on Iran for us without giving us anything that you can't tell us, given your role in the Intelligence Committee. Are we going to see strikes on Iran?
I think all options, that's fair to say, all options are on the table, and the president means business. One of my dear friends when we were young guys, young pups in the Air Force is Dan Kane. Raising Dan Kane, we knew each other when we were in our 20s, and I went over and saw him, and we had a nice visit. He's the most competent, and he's like George Marshall-esque, I think, because he's so good at his job as Joint Chiefs Chairman. And Pete Hegseth's done a wonderful job as a Secretary of War. President Trump's got a great team, and Iran, I would be nervous if I were Iran. You better stop enrichment, and you better stop being the largest state sponsor of terror, and then we might have some kind of a deal. And they're butchering thousands of their own citizens to stay in power. And the left was silent. I don't want to ever hear them talk about Gaza again. Where were you when Tehran was bleeding?
Now, the president gave them a 10-day period. That 10-day period ends next week. So what are you looking at as far as the Intelligence Committee to sort of handicap whether or not the president makes a move next week?
I think the mullahs should look at what happened in Venezuela. I think this is clear that this president paints with bold colors, not soft pastels.
Okay.
I mean, Cuba's teetering. They're on the brink. Venezuela's cooperating with us. Mexican drug cartels are reeling. And he's looking at Tehran, and he's looking at legacy. He's looking at making us safer. He secured the border, and he's going to do it, with the world over, really.
All in the face of a free America.
All right, I just have a very small. Okay, so I already showed this one. Sean Hannity just posted this just a couple hours ago, saying hidden camera captures alleged Iran-linked terrorists plotting to assassinate Trump. Guys, the timing of this to me suggests that not only they have new information, but also they're preparing the minds of Americans to be for attacking the Islamic Republic. So I mean, maybe like some Americans will be convinced that okay, so different Americans require different justifications, right? So some Americans will be like, yeah, the Islamic Republic is going to get nuclear weapon. It's important for the safety of America for us to get rid of them. But then some Americans were like, oh, okay, so they're not going to believe that, even though this is different because we actually have evidence for this. Some Americans will be more. I mean, you don't need like majority of Americans. You just need enough Americans to be convinced for President Trump's political capital to not completely dry up in the middle of the war, right? That's all you need, right? So you could convince some Americans by the fact that your president was being like they had a plan to assassinate your president, like what the hell, like obviously you should respond to that. And some Americans would be moved by the fact that, I don't know, the Islamic Republic is so brutal to its own citizens. Some Americans do actually genuinely care about being a force for supporting people who are fighting for their freedom and in different places of the world. Believe it or not, some Americans actually do care about that. So that's all I have for now. I saw some people wanted to comment on all of this, so Danny, who's first?
I saw Jeffrey wanted to respond to this. Otherwise, I have only Richard up.
Susie also, I think, wanted to respond to this.
Oh.
I don't know if she wanted to be added to the list or wanted to respond to this.
Okay,
No, you can add me to the end of the list.
Okay. So Jeffrey.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so you're not wrong. Although I will say this, we had evidence for Iraq. We found thousands of tons of chemical weapons in Iraq, 558 metric tons of lower enriched uranium in Iraq. And second, the Mullah regime does indeed need to go, otherwise they will get a bomb. And you're not wrong. The campaign against the Mullah regime will be nothing like our operation in Iraq. For instance, the two main points of difference will be the air campaign, given the assets that have been put in the region, will be night and day more massive than what was seen in the opening stages of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And there will be no boots on the ground other than probably tier one operators. Like there's not going to be a very large ground force footprint. I mean, from what I'm seeing, the assets in the region, what you'll see is shock and awe proper. And the mullahs are not going to know what the fuck hit them.
Like, I hope this is all everybody say that it's going to be, because if it is, it's going to be, if what they are telling us this is going to be, if it's all of that, this is going to be the most modern, the most advanced, the most futuristic, the war that is going to be studied for decades and decades to come. Is going to be the most insane, fast, intense war that we have seen, not just in our lifetime, but in history as a whole. If everything they're saying is going to actually happen. So Jeffrey, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I'm saying if President Trump pulls the trigger, which it looks like, again, it's leaning very much towards that, given where everything's at now, and it is indeed selected, like it's indicative of what he has said on Truth Social, which is there's no limited strike being discussed. It will be a massive air campaign. I promise you, the amount of targets that get serviced so quickly will make those mullahs' heads spin. Like you're talking about 18, well, it's going to be a lot. Like they're not going to know what the fuck hit them. Although, understand, I'm not saying that's time to keep like His Highness Prince Reza. I'm not saying go do anything immediately. I'm just saying where it looks right now, given the forces that are in the region and given the continuing steps that are going on, like we just pulled our people out of Israel. We just sat there and, we have like subs now in the region, which should be able to launch lots of cruise, like Tomahawk cruise missiles in under 6 minutes. Like that would be, they're not going to know what hit them.
Next, we will go to Richard.
Hey, Richard.
Hi, Armin. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Thank God. Doing well. Almost Purim, actually. I had a question. You may have addressed this previously. Just wanted to get your opinion on this. And I'm not trying to be offensive or anything, but I'm thinking about the likely challenges of stability challenges in Iran, during the transitional period and even after the referendum. Realistically, do you think if the U.S. decided to build bases there or take bases as a way to preserve stability, would that be a major issue with the Iranian people? Do you think it would actually create more problems than it solves?
So you're saying after the Islamic Republic falls, and when we have a secular democracy, if we have U.S. military bases in Iran, if that would create an issue with the Iranian people and the new government?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I mean, I personally will welcome that. And I think, I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of the Iranian people, right? I think that we have a lot of strong cases for why this would be something that would be welcomed, but I'm guessing, okay? I don't want to predict this, okay? Because, first of all, it brings stability. Second of all, the Iranian people's favorite number one country is United States, right? So if you look at scientifically collected polls after Iran, among all countries in the world, the most Iranian people, the number one country that they have the most positive view on is the United States by Iranians, right? So that's two. Three, if President Trump does attack the Islamic Republic, a lot of Iranians will have even more positive view towards America because of it, right? And they will see, their liberation partly because of the United States attacking the Islamic Republic. Four, we already see the United States has military bases in countries that it's allied with. So this would be seen as what America and its allies do with each other, right? So, for example, we have U.S. military bases in Germany, in South Korea, right, in the Philippines, and we also have a historical record for that being beneficial to the country where United States went and built military bases in for their stability, right? So that when one country and United States come up with this agreement, the United States is allowed to make military bases in those countries. The country that has allowed that is getting the better end of that deal. So even though this is in the interest of United States, it's actually even in more of the interest. Like you're getting so much security, you're getting so much security that you didn't pay for, right? Like you're getting the world's greatest military in the world coming in for their own interest, making military bases in your country, and in return, your enemies would not dare attack you because you have military bases there, right? It's like it just makes so much sense. Like it's not for no reason why so many people came out like, yeah, come build, like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, South Korea, Germany, all of these countries. Why would they agree to this? Like this has been voluntarily, right? So, and by the way, it's not like United States is just going to come make military bases in Iran with no permission. Like they're not going to do that, obviously. So, if that ever happens, it's going to be because of with the agreement of the new government. And so it so if it ever happens, it has been with the approval of the Iranian people, because Iran is going to be a democracy, and if the Iranian people wouldn't want this, the representatives in our parliament, in our majlis, would not approve of such a thing because they're going to be voted out if the Iranian people do not want that, right? So if you end up seeing U.S. military bases inside Iran, it must have been because the Iranian people were convinced that this is a good idea, or else it wouldn't happen. And I for one think that that's such a, especially for a new democracy that is dealing with a lot of instability, that would be a huge positive.
No,
That
I
could be
think
the
it's a good argument. I mean, the Iranian scenario is probably going to be fairly similar to the German one post World War II, where you're going to have stability threats internally, regime loyalists and other Islamists basically trying to conduct an insurgency, try to start a low-level civil war. So the U.S. bases were basically there to make sure that, obviously, just as the Nazis could never return to power in Germany, that they would help the new government in Iran make sure that the regime never returns to power.
All right. So I think it's actually more like South Korea than Germany, because in Germany, when Nazis fell, the German people were still sympathetic to Hitler, right? Many of them were still sympathetic to Hitler. But when Khamenei falls, the Iranian people are closer to America, and they're not at all sympathetic to the Ayatollahs, right? So I think it's like South Korea, where we're more concerned about like foreign threats or threats to our borders, like at the instability by people who are not considered to be Iranians or pro-Iran. So United States having military bases in South Korea, the South Koreans welcomed that because they saw like North Korea as a threat, right? But when United States had military bases in Germany, the threats were the German people themselves not becoming Nazis again, right? Right. So, but that's why I think like it's not like Germany, because we don't have that concern with the Iranian people, right?
Well, there are far more Germans who are sympathetic to Hitler than there would be, Iranians that are sympathetic to the IRGC or the Ayatollah. But I think, given whatever polling data we've seen, we're still talking about in Iran thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, some of which might be fanatical loyalists. So it's not enough to, really sustain the long-term civil war, but it is enough to cause instability, insurgent attacks, things like that. That would be the argument for the U.S. base to
Yeah,
help eliminate.
yeah, that would help with that. But even if we didn't get any, so I my main concern would be threats at the borders, right? I'm talking like, I don't know, Taliban or different Islamic groups from Pakistan or Baluchis, especially our eastern borders, like the Baluchi separatists or stuff like that. And I'm not saying that we're not going to have internal concern with what is remained of the Islamic Republic. And if American bases are there, obviously that would be helpful. I think like we're going to also do a lot of cooperation maybe with Mossad, but honestly, I think that the main help we need is those eastern borders. And even if there was no military bases inside Iran, we would be able to deal with internal threats. I do think that the one of the challenges of the new Iran is that we have too many applications for our military, right? Like I'm pretty like, because how many Iranians are patriotic and they're eager to contribute into Iran becoming stable and prosperous. I think we're going to have so many Iranians wanting to defend their country that we're going to have more than enough forces to deal with internal threats. I'm not saying it's going to be a challenge. Enough, obviously, American help would be really much appreciated, at least from my perspective. Like me as a single vote, I would say that. But I would be more concerned regarding our eastern borders, especially because it's radical, it's poor, and a lot of people are underestimating how much the water shortages in our eastern borders is going to lead to more instability. So that's the main thing that we're going to need help with.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank
Alexia
you.
had a question in the chat. She wanted to clarify which countries are evacuating their citizens from Iran.
I raised my hand. I'm going to go through an entire list of talking
Okay.
about that. But I think Jeffrey wanted to mention something about this. I think, yeah.
Yeah, water security. I wanted to bring this up. The one of the best ways we could address water security in Iran would be co-generating nuclear power and fresh water via nuclear desalination. Do you know why I bring that up? The issue is not Iranian people having access to civilian nuclear power. Nobody is against that. The issue is the Mullah regime having access to nuclear power, because the Mullah regime, you can just take a look at the nature of their nuclear plant. This is said by Rubio just yesterday, right? Secretary of State Rubio. It's very clear that the Mullah regime's use or application of nuclear power has nothing to do with civilian power or research. It has everything to do with nuclear weapons. So when you hear these like red green alliance leftist douche canoes trying to morally flatten, well, how come, it was okay for like the Shah, his highness, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi to have nuclear power and not the mullahs? Because it's the qualitative difference between the nature that possesses the technology. I mean, it's like having a child mannequin, right? A child mannequin in a children's department store, benign and non-threatening, just like nuclear power under His Highness Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, very much benign and non-threatening. If you find the exact same child mannequin in a convicted child molester's house, it takes on in it like the same thing with like the Mullah regime having access to nuclear power. It takes on an entirely different meaning. What's the takeaway? You know what one of the biggest things that was purchased by brave Iranian protesters' sacrifice, Armin? And this actually, Senator Rubio, everybody says this now, is that it made it very clear that there is no similarity between the Mullah, like the Iranian people, who now, I mean, Americans very much are behind in love, and the Mullah regime that has illegally occupied Iran since '79.
All right. Next, let's go to Susanna.
Yay.
Oh, hey. So a fun fact that I want to tell everyone else is that to give you a perspective of how dead serious Iranians are about fighting the regime, I personally have a guy that I know here in my local Iranian American community, and I hadn't seen him in a few years until this past weekend. And I was like, "Oh, dude, where you been?" And I haven't seen him since like Women Life Freedom. This dude went and enlisted in the army so that he receives military training so he can go fight the Islamic Republic. And he's doing this over the age of 30, which is like 10 times harder. So like, yeah, Jeffrey's cracking up because that's how dead serious these people are. Like rock on, brother. I was just browsing the New Iran subreddit while I was listening to you, and Armin, they're like, I've discovered all these like very sweet posts of people like posting your clips and being like, "Oh my god, I love Armin." So you're
Really?
popular in the New Iran subreddit. Hell yeah.
Oh my god. Is English or Persian? English?
Mostly English, but they do both.
Oh my god. Okay. Well, send them to me, like those parts.
Okay, shit. Okay. I had an
Okay.
actual question though, and it was something I thought about during the last segment you were speaking, Armin. And I'm not 100% sure how to articulate this question. But one thing I think about is like, why are, for lack of a better term, the pro Pahlavi opposition so far behind in terms of their political advocacy, specifically within the United States? And I don't want to phrase that question in a way that is like dismissing all the work that has been done. I'm just
Right.
giving a factual assessment of the fact that like NIAC or other groups have made,
MEK.
yeah, exactly, like very long lasting, thorough relationships and built very deep rapport with certain political operatives within the American political structure and strata that the pro Pahlavi people like have not even started to make until essentially this year is when there's like actual traction. And I just find it interesting because this movement is not new. There are like people like, what's his name? Like Dr. Sakui, that like super fiery monarchist dude, who have been doing this for like decades. And I don't
We
know.
don't
It's something
support him, by the way. He's pro monarchist but anti Pahlavi. So okay.
what? Okay, well, that's a separate
Yep.
topic.
Oh,
Right.
Well, that's a separate topic. But
Um,
so he's hysterical though. So what do you make of that?
So actually, no, you did. Actually, so let me give context for people so they could then answer it properly. For years, there has been many different Iranian political groups who have done, unfortunately, they have done like groups that we don't approve of, that are not approved of by the Iranian people, who don't represent the Iranian people, who have done a really, really good job when it comes to lobbying Washington and been able to have a lot of influence on American politics without actually being a representation of the Iranian people, while claiming that they represent the Iranian people. And the two most famous ones are the MEK and Nayak, right? And Nayak represents the Islamic Republic's reformist side, and they are basically a lobby group of the Islamic Republic, which should technically be legal in Washington, D.C., and they have been more influential on the Democratic Party, especially among progressives, like not just the Democratic Party, but like also like far leftist media and progressives. And then we have the MEK, which is a Marxist Islamic cult, which, and the Iranian people hate them more than the Islamic Republic. And you would think the Marxist Islamic cult will be also a group that would be closer to progressives. But for some reason, they have managed to get very close to the Republican Party. And they have spent a lot of money on getting a lot of Republicans in their pocket. And a lot of like a lot of Republican politicians support the MEK. For example, Rudy Giuliani, Bolton, Ted Cruz at some point supported them, Mike Pompeo, and Mike Pence. These are the names that comes to my mind on politicians who support the MEK, and they are the least popular. And it's really interesting that conservatives are supporting the MEK, given that they're Islamist and Marxist at the same time. So it's a but they have worked for years in trying to buy American politicians from the Republican Party, and they have become very influential. And both of these groups have managed to not just be influential on politicians, but a lot of think tanks, a lot of media. There's a lot of podcasts. So, for example, for years, I remember every time there was a YouTube show or a podcast or a TV, like a show, like a news channel saying that, and we have the Iranian expert explaining us the situation. The expert was from Nayak. Every single, I could like as soon as they were like the host was like, and we have the Iranian expert. I was like, this is Nayak, isn't it? This is Nayak, isn't it? And then they would say the name. I was listening to podcasts. I would look it up. Like, God damn it, it's Nayak. And not only that, so many commentators, when they were talking about Iran, they're like, they would refer to Trita Parsi's book, for example, as their like as their Bible on all things Iran's. By the way, that guy is the founder of Nayak, right? So many of the narratives regarding anti-Pahlavi, regarding pro the Islamic Republics, pro the JCPOA, anti-Trump's, throwing out the JCPOA. All of this came from the Nayak narratives and Tito Parsi's book, right? And so the third, like a lot of, so we have the actual voice of the Iranian people are not the reformers through Nayak, and it's not the MEK, Mariam Rajavi being the leader. So you could criticize the Iranian people like, well, where were you? Especially now that we have demonstrated that the patriotic pro-Pahlavi voice is the dominant voice of the Iranian people through the Lion and Sun Revolution. We have demonstrated that. We're seeing now, finally, Iranian institutions like Nufti and UFDI that are doing lobby work, that are doing think tanks, that are doing articles, that are doing a lot of media works, that finally what was missing is now there in English in America. We have the institution in Israel, in European countries, they're there, they're present, they're making the connections. So it finally exists and it's now competing with them, and it's actually like crushing it. So you might ask, like, where were you guys all these years, right? What did Nayak and the MEK had that you guys didn't, right? And the answer, I don't know, maybe I think Susie might not be satisfied by this answer, but the answer is what they had is money, a lot of it, right? And the MEK had a lot of money from Saddam, and I think also from Saudi Arabia once Saddam was removed. And obviously, Nayak has a lot of support from the Islamic Republic, and they have all the money as like oil and gas money as well, because they continue to do it without money. So Nufti, for example, has announced that they are not going to take a single cent from any country or any non-Iranian. Their entire budget is based on donations from Iranians, which is very small. Compared to government money, is basically close to non-existence compared to the budget that the MEK and NIAC still have, right? So no grants, because these are just going to be American money. All their budget has to come from Iranian people donating to it, which is very small. This is why when I was talking, I had, one of the writers of the IPP plan, the guy that was responsible for the entire education section. I had him on my show, and I asked him, like, okay, so who's helping you? Because he's getting, so not only he was writing the education part, he was getting thousands and thousands of documents and criticism and emails being sent to him, and the order from the prince was to review all of it, to update the booklet, right? And I was asking on the show, like, okay, like, who's helping you? Like, do you have a secretary? Do you have like interns? Do you have volunteers? And on the show, he was like, I'm so glad you asked me that, because nobody ever asks us that. And it was like, it's just me. It's like there's nobody. Like, this is like a group of really small people tasked with like doing the impossible, and they're not even getting paid for it, right? They have their jobs, and this is like a side thing that they're doing, right? So it's basically with a very small budget, and that's the reason. The only thing that we have, like, they have money and we have numbers, and it's just it's just basically the power of money versus the power of us, just there's just being so many of us, and that's why we have been so behind.
I kind of agree, kind of disagree. Like, you can have political traction without money. Obviously,
Yeah.
I mean, look, so it makes the world go around. And also, I love Nufti. I would never take away the amazing work that they've done. But as someone with a lot of experience in a nonprofit, that business model sucks, bro. But
Well, it's not.
I understand why they have that attitude, but god damn.
Yeah, but because there's like, yeah, I understand, like, limiting yourself to donations from Iranian only limits you really financially. But if you're familiar with the internal politics in Iran, it was necessary. It was
Oh
really
no, I
necessary,
mean
or
the
else
paranoia
Iranian
is
people.
off the charts, don't get me wrong.
Well, I mean, it's justifiably, because we have been backstabbed so many times.
No, that's what
By the
I
way,
tell all my Iranian
yeah.
friends. I was like, when I started to get involved with this community, I thought you were paranoid as fuck. The deeper I go, I realize it was 100% justified. You are
Right.
right, and I'm sorry.
Right. That's okay. But before we go to Jeffrey, by the way, guys, if you're adding commentary, make it very, very short, because I want to make sure that I have another list of things that I need to show you. But Susie, that was a very good question. I saw Shadow is the admin from our Persian community, so I'm so glad that he's here. He speaks to us from inside Iran. And Shadow, did you raise your hand to add to this, or did you want it to be added to the list?
No, to add to this. Yeah, go on.
Oh,
Shadow.
add
Hi,
it to the list.
is my voice okay? I just want to check it.
Yes, your voice is okay. Okay, so I think he wanted to be added to the list. Okay, so let's go move on, and
He
then we'll
said
get
in
to
chat
chat.
that he wanted to respond.
Oh, respond? Shadow, respond then to this point.
Is my voice okay, Armin? About funding, do you think we can somehow take this, bad attitude about funding, somehow we clear it, and because this is necessary to have fundraising and make your process go forward. And I think one of the main reason that Nufti or some community like this can't go forward more and more is because of this bad, such a bad point of view about funding in Iran.
I'm just going to quickly address that. And by the way, thank you for being here. We have voices, guys, from inside Iran. This is amazing. So, yeah, we could fix that, our mistrust when it comes to money, after the revolution, because right now we don't have time to address that. Like, we're like in the middle of a war, so fixing that problem is going to take like years of talking about, attitude towards money. And but right now we have to deal with the situation that with the cards that we have been dealt with, and this is what we have. So that's a longer term plan that we need to have later, right?
And it's funny, I think, that money in the Iranians' idea is bad is because of the leftism in Iran. Because the leftism, it says money is bad. Money is the symbol of capitalism and these kind of things, you know?
Yeah, but I think that's going to be resolved once our economy grows. So I'll talk about that later. But let's go through the list right now. But you're right that we have some issues with that right now in our culture, and it's the influence of both Islam and Marxism that we need to fix that. I do agree with you, and I think it's going to be fixed. But yeah, but Jeffrey, I know you wanted to comment. I really so if you could make it very very short, and then we'll go to the next person.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's true that money allows you to move things around. At least for me, it's very much the sincerity demonstrated by you and Goldie. Well, I'm going to, because I'm on your shot, by you, particularly when you shared something like you did yesterday with regards to your commitment to ensuring that Iranians are free. That's the reason I'm here, right? There's plenty of people who will work for money, but that's not what you guys do. I heard you yesterday. I guarantee you, everybody in this room heard you. And that has a power all of its own, brother.
No. Well, thank you. Okay, well, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
So, anyway, you're next, Armin.
Okay, I'm next. Okay. Okay. So, guys, what I want to show you is one reason why maybe the United States is going to be attacking very, very soon. Like I already told you some of the reasons why this might be happening. Again, nothing is for certain, but one reason why a lot of people are expecting an attack to happen against the Islamic Republic by United States any moment now is the list of countries who are telling their citizens to get the F out of Iran. Then we have the Chinese embassy in Israel urge the citizens to boost security measures and be prepared for emergencies. This one was from earlier today as well. And then we have this one. The U.S. State Department has evacuated non-essential staff from the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. Then we have this one. Let me change this to English for you guys. Malaysia's foreign minister stated that 13 citizens of this country are still in Iran despite the foreign minister's warning, and they have been asked to sign a disclaimer document so that in the event of any potential incident, the Malaysian government is not held responsible. So like, you're on your own. If you're not leaving, then you're on your own. Then we have New Zealand. New Zealand's foreign minister warned citizens of this country to leave Iran. Winston Peters said that there may be hundreds of New Zealanders present in Iran, while currently only the residence of 26 people is registered. And then we have this. So China was warning the Chinese people in Israel, but this is another China update. Again, all of these were from earlier today, saying China warns its citizens not to travel to Iran and urges those currently there to leave as soon as possible. And then we have this. The British government has temporarily withdrawn its diplomatic staff from Iran, citing the deteriorating security situation, and its embassy in Tehran is now operating remotely. So those were the updates of the countries I had. Two other updates as well that is relevant. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's relevant. Just seems like we're getting so many updates that are suggesting that United States attacking the Islamic Republic is justified. So we have this one, for example, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, reports that Iran is stockpiling uranium enriched up to 60% at an underground site in Isfahan. The facility targeted by US and Israel strikes in June appears mostly intact. And then we got this update from Yoav Gallant, which is very significant. The previous Minister of Defense of Israel. He's saying the coming weeks will shape the coming. Oh, this is look at this. This is very powerful. The coming weeks will shape the coming decades in the Middle East. So I don't know what he knows. that we don't, but it seems like something big is about to happen. And then lastly, I have this update for you guys on wait, yeah. So basically, today, on February 27, 2026, the Department of State authorized the departure of non emergency U.S. government personnel and family members of U.S. government personnel from Mission Israel due to safety risks. In response to security incidents and without advance notice, the U.S. Embassy may further restrict or prohibit U.S. government employees and their family members from traveling to certain areas of Israel, the Old City of Jerusalem, and the West Bank. Persons may wish to consider leaving Israel while commercial flights are available. So, this is actually sounds a big deal. I don't know what you guys think. While commercial flights are available, I mean, this is speaking again. This was from a few hours ago, from today, earlier today, and it's saying while commercial flights are available. I mean, to me, this sounds like language as if commercial flights are soon going to be unavailable, which happens when war breaks out. So those are just a list of updates that I just wanted to give you regarding why many people anticipate that the United States is going to be attacking very soon. Again, nothing is certain. I'm just showing you the signs that people are pointing to.